I was about the age of 13 when this story took place. I lived in an old house just on the outside of a large city and was surrounded by cornfields and forests. I had lived there all of my life before this happened. It was a dreary summer night, which is mostly normal for the place I live, but on this particular night, something just felt off. I had come home from soccer practice around 6 p.m. and my parents always had me in bed by 8. The night went on as usual. I ate dinner, played with my little sister, and did some weightlifting before bed. I got into bed around 7:45. The story will better make sense if I tell you some things about me. I'm a restless sleeper. I toss and turn and get up periodically through the night, and I've always had a fascination with the afterlife. Okay, back to the story. I'm not sure exactly what time I fell asleep, but I didn't really have my usual episodes through the night. This was the first night I slept peacefully in years. I was suddenly awoken by a strange noise coming from the bathroom in my bedroom. Since I had to use the bathroom anyways, I decided to go check it out. I thought it might be a mouse or a bat, since we live in the country and the house is old and has holes in the older walls. I went in the bathroom, I didn't see anything, so I proceeded on my way to the washroom. After using the washroom, I washed my hands and face, and when I was washing my face, I looked up at the large mirror that overhangs my sink. Since there was still water in my eyes, my vision is blurry and I couldn't really see much, but I thought I saw something behind me, but I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I dried my face off and looked up at the mirror again. Right behind me, there was a little girl, clutching her body, almost as if she was hiding from something. Her ghostly outline scared me at first, but as I kept looking, I could tell that whatever was scaring her was coming from the basement. So I walked to my basement door and I opened it slightly at first because I was very scared of what might be behind it. This being said, I've lived in this house my entire life and have never been in the basement. My dad mentioned to me that it had 3 separate parts, all separated by small windows that you could barely fit through. So I walked down the basement steps and got down to the bottom where the light switch was. I turned it on, and all seemed like it was okay. That's until I heard what sounded like crying from one of the other parts of the basement. In my mind, I was thinking, F this, but in my heart, I knew I had to see what it was. So I ventured through the part of the basement, and the light couldn't reach the other side where the other room was. It was pitch black. I still heard the crying, but since it was so dark, I couldn't see anything. Something gave me the urge to go to the far corner of the room, because the way the moonlight reflected off of the floor, you could kind of see where the little light you had was. I walked over to the corner and stared directly in the middle of the room. There, in the middle of the room, was a chair. It had shackles for the feet and what looked like some type of restraint for arms or something like that. That's when I noticed that there was something sitting in that chair. I walked closer, only to reveal that it was the same little girl's ghost that had been crying previously in the bathroom. She was also crying there and had needles stuck in her arms, draining some type of fluid into her. All was quiet till she started screaming. It was so high-pitched I thought it sounded like a siren or something of that nature. She was saying words, but I couldn't make out anything she was saying until she spoke 5 menacing words that made my heart sink. She said, "Get out, Daddy is coming." Not even thinking twice, I sprinted up the basement stairs, tripping over my own feet and fell flat on my face once I reached the top. I got back up and ran to my parents' room. I told them what happened. They went down there and checked everything out. I told them about the chair and the little girl that was screaming. They told me that there was no chair in the basement, and then that there had never been 3 parts of the basement. Me not believing them, I walked back down there, and the room that I saw the chair in was not there. There had only ever been 2 parts of the basement, my dad said. I told him what I saw and how I knew there had to be some mistake, but I never see that part of the basement again. I'm 18 now, and I decided to do some research on the house to see if there's any history that could have caused that. I came across an article of a man who had been arrested in 1868 for doing some lab experiments on all of his children. After the man was arrested, the police found all 12 skeletons of his children stuffed behind the basement stairs under debris and concrete. Now that I finally have moved out of the house, and that I finally have an answer as to what I saw that night, I am finally at peace. But those 5 words still hang over me to this day. Get out, Daddy is coming. My sister Penny was always afraid of the upstairs at our house. She never went up there at night. Our main conversation every night went something like this. Penny, Buffy, Go upstairs and find me my white sweater, black jeans, and leather jacket. The clothing items would change from night to night, but I was always asked to get her things. But she would not go up without an adult after dark. Me. Why can't you go get them? Penny. Because something is up there. Me. I sleep up there, nothing has happened to me. Penny. Just wait, someday it will. Okay, I will admit, it was creepy as hell up there. I'll give you the layout. There are 2 rooms that lead into each other. No hallway. And there is an attic above and one on each side. The house is well over 100 years old, and there is a banister over the stairs, but it is closed off by a door. I remember Penny coming home from dates, and before she would take her boyfriend upstairs, she would send him up with the flashlight to check the closets and under the beds, even though I was in one of those beds. Once when her mother asked her why she would not sleep upstairs in her room, she rattled off numerous reasons. Penny would say, "You can see small lights coming out of the closet, and you can hear footsteps and heavy breathing in the attic. And there's always a sense of being watched a little too closely." And I would say, "That is ridiculous. I have never seen anything or heard anything. You should stop letting her sleep on the couch every night." My mom would say, "She's okay. She can sleep where she wants. She's not hurting anything." I think my mom knew, but since nothing was bothering me at the time, she overlooked it. Better to have one daughter on the couch than 2. I even took this problem to my dad, being as he was always on my side, and Mom seemed that she was always on Penny's side. Eventually, my sister got married and moved out when she was 18, and I was 11. Then I guess the ghost or whatever thought it was my turn. This is my experience. The attics, I would hear stomping, and it was not just in one attic, it was all 3. There were whispers in the closet like 2 children having a conversation. The conversations I overheard were from talking about dolls. Sometimes they were to figure out what would happen to someone named Uncle Doffy, and sometimes it sounded as if they were discussing how they could run away. I did not get a bad feeling from the girls in the closet. I was always being watched all day and all night, and lived in a constant state of panic. When I was upstairs, every nerve was on edge. The worst thing was this big black shadow in the middle of the night asking where Penny was. The voice wasn't the voice of a kid. It sounded like it came from someone who smoked 4 packs a day for 50 years. The black shadow asked after my sister 6 times every night. When I would not answer out of fear, the shadow would throw things at me. Books, figurines, even pictures. Then it was my turn to sleep on the couch, and then I understood my sister. It wasn't an excuse, she actually heard these things. I never understood why I didn't until after Penny moved out, and I was bullied by this ghost or whatever. That's what this entity was, a bully, something that always had to have power over us young powerless sisters that lived in the home. Fast forward 2 years after Penny was gone, she had her own home. Her oldest sister, Jeannie, couldn't afford the house she was renting due to being in the middle of a divorce, brought her 3 kids and moved in with us. Jennifer was 5, Kevin who was 3, and Amanda who was 2, which meant Jennifer would be staying with me, and we were both expected to sleep upstairs. We were woken up all the time by stomping, and when Jennifer would start to cry from being scared, I would tell her it was because the house was old and that's what old homes did. They settled at night. Exactly what my mom always told me when I heard odd noises in our home. Jennifer's 6th birthday rolls around, and my brother buys her one of those creepy clown dolls. You know, the ones with a plastic head, a wire body under its clown clothes, and has the most insanely evil laugh. That clown was always going off by itself at night, never during the day. One night, I decided I had had enough, so I got out of bed and went over to take the batteries out. But when I opened the battery pack, no batteries were inside. I told my mom and older sister, but no one cared, or they thought it was an overactive imagination. Penny believed me. So the next day I got up and threw it in the attic. But it would still go off, in the middle of the night. Then one day I came home, and the doll was out of the attic and sitting on the chair across from my bed. When I asked who put it there, no one knew. We ended up burning that doll. Penny came and burned sage in our home. Now that I'm grown up, my kids who like to stay with my mom always tell me about their thing being moved and their chargers being jerked from the wall. But I still feel that it waits to this day for Penny to come home. Maybe because she feared it the most, I don't know. But I know that that bully brought me a lot closer to the sister whom I possibly couldn't live without now. I'm a 16-year-old male, and I used to be a bit skeptic to all things paranormal until one weekend in an abandoned house. To give some backstory, I was with my two best friends at the time, Delaney and Julia. We were home alone and bored at Delaney's house with nothing to do. I can't remember whose idea it was, but one of us had the idea to drive around some of the old dirt roads and check out abandoned buildings. There are a lot of abandoned places around where we live. It's pretty far out in the country, surrounded by either farms or woods. So we went to the first two old tobacco houses, took a few pictures, and just sort of goofed off. We got back on the road and saw an old, unkempt driveway. Keep in mind, hardly anyone lives on this road. So we decided to drive down that driveway, despite Julia saying we shouldn't because it didn't feel right to her. Not the fact that it'd be trespassing, just that she had extremely bad vibes about that place. However, Delaney and I insisted. We drove down it, and it went pretty far back into the woods. This is where weird things start to happen. We parked the truck in a little clearing and noticed an abandoned house in the distance. However, before we got out of the truck, the front sensor went off beeping like crazy. Then so did the back one. It was as if someone had walked around the truck. The weird thing about this is that we were parked in a clearing, so there was nothing to make the sensors go off. Even if there were, they would have gone off before we even parked the truck. It wouldn't have just randomly got off in that order. Delaney and Julia were kind of freaked out, but I just ignored it. It wasn't until later that this would freak me out too. We all got out of the truck and started walking towards the house. I was in front with my friends walking a decent distance behind me. If I'm honest, I was just showing off and acting fearless. I wasn't that scared until I saw her. A woman. A woman with dingy, unkempt looking hair and a colonial-style dress looking around the corner of the house. She looked at me and just put her finger up to her lips and shushed me very loudly. The feeling I had is almost indescribable. Imagine feeling as if all sense of safety and protection is gone, and you don't feel at all happy. My heart felt like it just stopped. I started crying. I was so scared. I knew she wasn't human. I don't know how. I just knew. I turned around to my friends and screamed, "Run!" and started sprinting back to the truck. My phone flew out of my pocket about halfway back to the truck. My friend Julia told me this had happened, and I told her to just leave it. Now, if you know me, you'd know if I'm ditching my phone, I'm serious. Julia and Delaney got back to the truck. We tried to open it, but it was locked. Delaney reached for her keys, but they were gone. And so was Julia's phone. It's as if whatever that thing was trying to keep us there. Delaney ran back and picked up Julia and I's phones and found her keys. We got in the truck and floored it out of there, right back to Delaney's house. You might think it's just coincidental we dropped all of our things. But the thing is, our phones and Delaney's keys were all deep in our pockets, and it didn't make sense for them to just fall out on their own like that. Later at the house, we were all talking about the entire situation, and I was explaining what I had seen. My friends didn't even hear the shush, nor did they see the woman. I was afraid they didn't believe me, but Julia reassured me that the look on my face and tears were proof enough for her to run as well. We later found that there had been a few sightings of ghosts on that road by workers at Fort Pickett, a military facility nearby.